Hello guys and welcome back to another episode. So today we're going to talk about Feral Druid's PvE guide. So if you're looking into being better Feral Druid, or you really need you can say start points of how to play Feral Druids, and you need help to how you can see which stats you need, which Azeroth trait you need, which talents, and how you actually play the game, like rotation and which spells should you use in which scenarios. So in this guide, Feral Druid PvE guide for patch 8.1, I will take you through Feral Druids and learn you how to play them. Keep in mind that this guide is kind of a standpoint, so you will learn how to play the class and everything, and you'll be pretty good to the class. But of course, you'll not be professional. That's something from you to take from here to up here. So again, in this guide here, we go through stats, Azeroth talents, and gameplay. So why not let's jump directly into it and see how it is. So here we first have the first thing is the stats. You're probably now thinking, in all your other videos you always say that the main stat like agility, like intellect, like strength, all those things are the most important ones. But in this case here, it's actually shown, and if you sim it, that secondary stats is actually quite better than primary stat. So for example, critical strike and mastery and haste can actually all do such a great job together that they actually can outperform agility. But enough about that, let's talk about the stats. So first of all, your most important stat I would say is critical strike. So critical strike helps all your spells with critical strike, of course critical. It also helps you dots to critical. And it means, for example, if you're using Shred and it deals normal damage, it generates 1 combo point. But if it critical strike, it will actually generate 2 combo points. That means you would have more combo points that you can waste on damage abilities. So that is why critical strikes really help you for generating more combo points, so you can deal more damage and all that. So that is why critical strike is pretty good for Feral Druid, as it helps you generating and bursting more damage. After that, I would pretty much say that mastery and haste is very equal, though mastery can be, after the little buff it got, it can actually be quite good, because mastery is now increasing your damage for time abilities and all your finishing spells. So that means all the spells you have that uses combo points, that is what they call a finisher. It also gets increased by mastery, and mastery also increases your bleeding damage. So that's why mastery is just a little better than haste. But after mastery, haste is brilliant, because haste is increasing your attack speed, your energy regeneration. It also increased the tick rate of your bleeding spells, so it takes more even over its duration, and also it reduces your global cooldown. So that means you can basically get your global cooldown down to 0.75 seconds. That is quite cool. After haste is actually agility, and I know you probably say to me now, we know agility is on all our gear, what is your point here? Well, my point is that you can actually get trinkets that either have critical strike, mastery, haste and agility, and in this case for Feral Druids it's actually best to have the secondary stat on your trinket. But again, eye level is also very important, so if you get an eye level that is 10 above, I would say always go with that. But else you can always try to sim your gear and see what it says. And for the last one, it's versatility. It basically does just increase your flat damage and reduce the damage you take. So it's not really that good. So that was the stats that you need as a Feral Druid in World of Warcraft patch 8.1. The next one we're going to talk about is the Azeroth traits. So and we will start with the Outer Ring. So the best one for the Outer Ring is Iron Jaws. So Ferocious Bite has 8% chance per combo point to increase damage of your next main by 242 per combo point. That is quite well. I mean, if you get that up, you can get a really strong maim out after your Ferocity Bite. It's pretty cool. It can help you in many situations. Treacherous Covenant is your number 2, I would say my number 2 recommended. Your primary stat is increased by 166 while you are above 50% health, and you take 15 increased damage while below 20% health. So you can say it helps you when you're above 50 and it doesn't help you when you're below 20. So it's kind of, but again, in PvE it should not be a problem. I mean, you have a healer, you should stay alive, so that should not be a problem. My number 3 for the outer ring must be Jungle Fury. Tiger's Fury increase your critical strike by 252 and last 12 seconds. That is pretty well. I mean, as I said on the stats, critical strike is pretty much the very important stat. So Jungle Fury here is going to help you getting more critical strike. So this is the 3 Azeroth traits I can recommend in outer ring. So now you're probably thinking about, what about middle ring? And I have middle ring here. So Overwhelming Power is my favorite one in my middle ring. Overwhelming Power is pretty much my favorite one almost in any classes in the game. That's such a cool Azeroth trait. But again, it gives you more haste and gives you quite much haste. So Overwhelming Power is definitely my favorite one. Number 2 is Unstable Flames. Your damage ability has chance to grant you 58 critical strike rating for 5 seconds, and it stacks up to 5 times. And God Ripper is my number 3, that has a chance to deal damage, and if the target is going below 30% health, well, it has a bigger chance. It's like executing. So Overwhelming Power is my number 1 recommended, that gives you a lot of haste. And Unstoppable Flames is my number 2, that gives you critical strike. And God Ripper is number 3 because it increases your damage. So if you could say you could get all these 3 traits, it would be pretty cool. It could be pretty cool. So that is the stats and the Azeroth traits. So for the next, we're going to do the talents and the gameplay, and for that I'm going to switch over in my in-game screen. So let me just switch over, and here we are. So let's go through each row, and I will explain each row which talent you should use for each scenarios. So for example, there's a scenario where maybe a single target or multiple target spell would be preferred. So let's go through each row and I will explain how you can set it together. So for the first row, Predator is only really good if you're against a lot of trash mob that is going to die often. So for example, if you're in a dungeon where you have a lot of trash mobs dying all the time, Predator can be really good because it will give you additional Tiger Fury. If you're playing against a single target boss or cleave bosses, it's not really helping you because it doesn't help you on bosses because they don't really die that often. So for single target damaging beast or cleave target, Sabertooth is the best one here. That it increases your first bite deals 20% increase damage and increased duration of rip on your target by 4 seconds per combo point spent. So this one is pretty much helping most of the time. So for example, single target scenarios should refresh the rip on the target. If you have full full combo points with your ferocious bite. So Sabertooth is the best one for single target cleave scenarios, and Predator is the best one for like trash mob scenarios. The next 3 rows is actually pretty much up to you. These 3 rows really don't have any damage impact on your gameplay. The only talent I would see helping out is in the middle here. Here you can get some more defense by taking reduced damage. You can get a healing spell that heals everyone all the time passively, or you can get more range on your spells. So for example, if you're going through trash mobs that is standing wider spread, this one here helps you to deal more damage over time on more wider spread targets. But again, none of these really help your damaging abilities, they're just for scenarios. For example, I like to have Tiger Dash, so I get an insane dash I can use. I like to have Balanced Affinity, so I can, have more range on my spell. And I like to use Mighty Bash for a stun spell. You could also use Typhoon if you want to have a AoE interruption in some dungeons. That can also be really good. But standard, I play with these three, and again this row here doesn't give any damage bonus. Now to the next row. So down here, Savage Roar and Soul of the Forest are pretty close. It's most up to the damage difference about these two is small. So you would normally say take the one of these two you prefer to play with. Soul of the Forest is a passively one that gives your finishing move grant 5 energy per combo point spent. So if you have 5 combo points, it will give you 25 energy back, and it deals 5% increased damage. So Soul of the Forest is really easy and good to play with. Savage Roar increase your damage and energy regeneration by 10% all the time, but the problem with this spell is that it requires you to actively refresh this spell all the time, and it costs combo points and energy. So that means by the time you're wasting time on refreshing Savage Roar, you could also have Soul of the Forest dealing damage. So it's a pretty much argue about what is best, Soul of the Forest or Savage Roar, but everyone is pretty much saying take the one that you like to play with. Don't think about which one is 100% best, because it is pretty much your preparation on this row here, if it's Soul of the Forest or Savage Roar. Because if you play with Savage Roar and you forget to use it or forget to refresh it, well then Soul of the Forest would be a better one for you. So take the one you want, but I personally would probably recommend Soul of the Forest, as I think it's making my rotation much easier, much smoother, and much more fun. For the next row here, we have Brutal Slash and Primal Wrath. So Primal Wrath is the best sustained AoE ability over time. So for example, if you want to have a good AoE sustained damage, Primal Wrath is really great. Brutal Slash is the best one if you want like AoE damage now. Like I want some, what is it called, burst damage, AoE burst damage. So if you want AoE burst damage, Brutal Slash is the best one. If you want AoE steady damage, sustained damage, then Primal Wrath is the best one. Scent of Blood is not really recommended, I would say, depending on Brutal Slash and Primal Wrath. But again, it depends on if you want to have Brutal Slash that is bursting, or you want to have Primal Wrath that is steady, or what's it called? It damage over time all the time, because Primal Wrath deals a lot of damage everyone into for 11 yards, and it applies rip to all enemies, so that means they have a bleeding all the time on them all. But Brutal Slash is dealing a lot of damage, just boom boom boom, and it has 3 charges, so it's kinda strong. Primal Wrath is giving you additional ability, Brutal Slash is just replacing your swipe, so you could probably say that Brutal Slash is the easiest one to play with because you don't get another spell, but yeah, it's pretty much up to you. Personally, I would probably play with what is called Brutal Slash, but again, that's up to you which one you would like to play with and in which scenarios. On the last row, Blood Talons is 100% the best one in almost any situations, so don't think about taking Moment of Clarity or Fear of Frenzy. Blood Talons is pretty much the best one in all scenarios, as it increases your damage after you have used your healing or entangling roots. And now you probably think, why should I have a talent that's increasing my damage after I have used a regrowth or enchantment? Well, let me show you here. Boom, 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 boom. I always have this one here. Your finishing moves has 20% chance per combo points to make your next regrowth or entanglement roots instant, free, and castable in all forms. So that pretty much means when you have, for example, what is it called? When you have a Ferocious Bite with 5 combo points, you pretty much get a free healing spell you can use, and after you use that healing spell, you can see here, casting Regrowth or Entangling Roots cause your next 2 melee abilities to deal 25 increased damage for their full duration. So that means if you get, let's say, okay, for example, if you use Ferocity Bite. Yeah. So you use Ferocity Bite, you get this buff on. then you use your normal rotation again, and when you're going to use, for example, Rip, then Rip will deal 20% more damage. Of course you use Regrowth first, then you use Rip, and then Rip will deal 20% more damage over the full duration. But keep in mind, if you refresh the Rip duration while this one is still active, it will not contain the 25% damage, it will cancel it and it will become a normal Rip. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So as you can see here, the talent trees right now I have is probably the one I would prefer to play with in pretty much any scenario. Of course, if I want to go through a dungeon with a lot of trash mobs and I want to do some more damage on trash mobs, I'll probably take Predator, but rest of the spells here, it would probably be much the same. So yeah. So that was the talents. Let's now go through the gameplay and how I recommend playing with Opener and dealing damage as Feral Druids. Okay, here we are ready for the rotation, the Opener, and how we should play it with the gameplay. So keep in mind, I will still give you the Opener and how you should play your rotation and how I feel. So the first thing we're going to do is in our Opener here. So here we have the boss that I'm going to face. I will be going to play with the talents called Blood Talents and Sabertooth. I like to play with these two on boss fights, so I would 100% recommend using Blood Talents and Sabertooth for making the most easy and smooth rotation. So before boss fight, every time you have to before boss fight, if you have Blood Talents, you're going to use Regrowth. So the cool thing about Regrowth is that it gives you 25% now damage increased on your next two damage abilities, melee damage abilities. So you know that's like, because you have Blood Talents for how long is it we have it on? We have it for 30 seconds. So if you're now thinking, okay, I need 30 seconds with Blood Talents, and you can see here 30 seconds, so just like you can use it whenever, but just use it before the boss fight, before the tank pulls. If the tank already pulled, don't stand still and begin to use Regrowth, it's like waste. But if he's ready for pull and he will pull like in 3 to 1 seconds or something like that, use Regrowth and be ready with 2 Blood Talents. That is the first step. After that, it's very important you go into stealth, because you're going to use now, what is it called? Rake. And the cool thing about Rake is that it increases the damage by 100 while inside stealth. That is insane. You could also use what is called Shred. Shred deals 30% increased damage and has double the chance of critical strike. But you don't really want that, you want a 100% boost on Rake while stealth. So again, your opener would be Regrowth, Cat Form, and go into stealth. So now you have just buff on. Now you have like 30 seconds where you can open your opener. So the first thing you would do is you would use, okay, you can see here. Are you ready? So normally I would say always go with Berserk first, and then Tiger's Fury. I know Tiger's Fury is normally a spell you would only use every time you need energy, but combining Berserk and Tiger's Fury are actually pretty great for opener, because, well, Berserk is reducing the cost of all your spells, and Tiger's Fury is increasing your damage by 15%. So you could use those two on the same time, because what is called Tiger's Fury is not on global cooldown. So that means you can see here, if I use my mouse here, I can use both on the same time. So that means now I can use Rake, Rip, go up to Shred up to 5 dots, and use Ferocious Strike, Ferocious Bite. So now I just refreshed my Rip because I play with Sabertooth. So if you saw in my rotation, there was a little thing that was weird, because what I did was in my open is, first of all I used my Rake, then I used Rip with 1 dot, and normally you would say, why are you using 1 dot? But that's because I'm going to refresh it through Sabertooth. So, and the reason for why I use both of these fast is also because in the start of the fight I use my Regrowth. So the first 2 spells I deal is dealing more damage. So again, back to cat form, back to stealth. So what I would do is I would use my rake, rip, shred, up to 5 combo points, and refresh with Ferocity Bite. So now I have rip for 20 seconds, and I can always just refresh my rake. So this is how I like to have my opener for playing Feral Druid. And yes, you could normally say if you have a Tiger's Fury when you actually need energy, but using Berserk and Tiger's Fury for your opener is dealing such an amazing damage together. And also you can basically macro them together in one macro. So for example, I could go in here and say burst, show tooltip, cast, Berserk, cast Tiger's Fury, there we go. Now I have one button where I can basically just click on it and it uses both of the spells. If both spells is on global cooldown, you cannot do it. It's only because Tiger's Fury is not on global cooldown that I can combine them. So again, what I would do is, first of all, I start casting Regrowth. So I have my Blood Talons. Then I go into Stealth. Then I would normally use my 2 buffs, but they're not ready. So now I use Rake, Rip, Shred, Ferocity Bite. And then back to your normal rotation. So you can see now after I used, well, let's wait with that part. So that is pretty much the opener. And again, I know the opener is pretty fun that you use only 1 dot with Rip, but you're refreshing it with your Shred. Your Ferocity Bite. Okay, my cooldown is now ready. Let's go through it again. Sorry, just volume it down for my sound because I cannot hear myself when I'm damaging so much. Okay, in here. So now we have Blood Talons, Stealth, use my Burst macro, both spells on, Rake, Rip, Shred, Ferocity Bite, Rake, and back to my normal rotation. So you can see it's a pretty solid rotation, it deals much damage and it works very well. So that is the opener. That first of all you use your Berserk, first of all you use Regrowth, so you get Blood Talons, go to Stealth, use your 2 damage buff abilities, and then Rake, Rip, Shred until you have 5 combo points, and then Ferocity Bite to refresh the Rip, and then use Rake again to hold it up. So you could probably say that is your solid opener on boss fights, I would say. So after that, when you're just going to sustain the damage, it's just very important, you can see here, that you hold up your Rake all the time. And your Rip, it's important that you just refresh it. If you have Sabertooth, it's pretty important you just refresh it through Ferocity Bite, because you don't have to refresh it through, through itself, because Ferocity Bite is dealing enough damage. So now you can see, because of predatory swiftness, I can use Regrowth instantly. That means I can get instantly Blood Talons. You should not use Blood Talons on Shred. You should use it on, try to see if you can use it on a finisher, and you can use it on a Rake, for example. That is pretty good. So for example, let's go in here, so I will use my spells here. So now you can see, now I have already predatory swiftness. That means, okay, let's get up some combo points. Okay, so now I use my instant healing. It just finished 1 second before. So here we go. So 1 Rake, and for example, Rip. So now I have a Rip, and I have a Rake that deals 25% more damage. That is Pretty cool. So my rip is right now dealing 1280 damage. So for example, if we go in here again, use my healing, so I have blood talents, go in here, use it now on ferocity bite. You can see my rip is still dealing 1288 damage, because even though I use blood tail, you can see even though here it only says it's increasing the damage, because of Sabertooth it also increases the damage of your rip when I refresh it through ferocity bite, as long as I use my blood talents. So that means when you use your blood talents you get from your healing, and remember every time you use a 5 combo spell you get a free cast of your healing spell, so you can get 2 stacks of blood talents. So pretty much how easy rotation is that you pretty much just have to hold up rake all the time, use shred when you need combo points, so the same for brutal slash. Brutal slash is pretty much, you could say, cheaper. You can see brutal slash is only 25 energy, shred is 40, and brutal slash is actually dealing a bit more damage. So you could say brutal slash you can also use for getting combo points. You should probably use it. I mean, you only have 3 combo points, so you should definitely use it. But now you can see if I use my ferocity bite with full combo cast, I get this one here, Predator Swiftness. So that means now I can use regrowth instantly, but I don't want to do it yet. I want to get up some combo points. Now I missed it because I wasn't fast enough, because I'm talking too much, but I hope you get the understanding of it. So we pretty much solid go through the rotation, sorry, the opener. But again, to understand the rotation, hold up rake all the time, hold up rip all the time, and if you play with Sabertooth, refresh rip not through rip the spell, but refresh it through your ferocity bite. Why? I'm not getting any combo points. What is happening? I'm not getting any combo points. I guess my game is bugged. Oh, okay, now I got my combo points. Something was wrong. So remember, when you have rip active on the target, don't use rip again to refresh it, use your ferocity bite. So Feral Druid is, I would say, it's not hard. It's pretty easy to maintain from damaging, but still, as you can hear, I'm having a pretty hard time telling how it is. Keep up rake, keep up your rip all the time, refresh rip through ferocity bite. And now my game is doing it again, that I don't. Thank you. Refresh. My game is bugging. Here we go. So keep up rip, keep up rake, refresh rip with ferocity bite. If you're talented the Sabertooth, use shred to gain combo points, and use brutal slash also if you gain combo points, because it deals more damage and it costs less, you could say, energy. So really great trade. Trash is also giving additional damage over time abilities, but it's only worth the energy it costs when you're actually facing more than 2 targets. So if it's only 1 target, it's not worth the energy cost. Also, when you can say Tiger's Fury is ready to be used again after your opener, when you use it in your opener, you should use it every time you need 50 energy. So normally use it every time you get below 30 energy, then use Tiger's Fury, it increases your damage and it gives you a lot of energy. So for example here you can see, if I go down on my energy, there we go, use it, boom, instantly 50 energy. Pretty great. And remember, every time you use 5 combo points, you get 3 instant cast of regrowth. So you can cast regrowth, and now you have blood talents on your next 2 melee abilities. So you should use it, for example, on a rake and a 5 combo point rip. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I think that's pretty much the rotation. I mean, that was the opener and the rotation, how you should use it. Well, we can also just quickly cover if you against multiple targets. So multiple targets, if there's like 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, if you can, you should use trash. So you can see now these 3 have damage your time abilities on them. That's pretty great. If you have time for it, you should also try to see if you can get a rake on them. If there's 1, 2 to 3 enemies, so try to see if you can get a rake. If there's more than 3 enemies, it's beginning to get to be hard to get rake on them all, and you should more focus on spamming brutal slash and trash. So again, on multiple targets, use trash for damage your time abilities. If it's only 1, 2 to 3, also use rake on them all, like this. You could probably also get a number 4. I mean, you can see it still has it, and I can still use trash over here. You can use trash over here, and I can use rake again to hold it up with Tiger Fury, rake, rake. So now they all have rake and trash. And what I could do now is I could use brutal slash, and brutal slash. And now I could begin again to put up all my dots again and start over. So that would probably be the favorite thing to do on trash mobs, with holding up rake, holding up trash, and spamming brutal slash on them. And of course, if you have combo points, you should use if you know the trash mob is going to be alive for a bit of a time, you should probably use rip. But if you know that the trash mob is probably going to die very soon, you should use ferocity bite. Yeah. So that was pretty much, what can I say, how you play Feral Druids. And I'm sorry if that's pretty weird. Why am I flying? Why am I flying tiger? Okay, never mind. Don't question it. So pretty much that was the opener. That was the rotation. I'm sorry if it was some kind of confusing. If you just follow the steps, it should be pretty easy, and you just have to learn the rotation even more. But again, this is pretty much the rotation, and yeah. So let's jump back to the other screen. So that was the Feral Druid guide for patch 8.1 PvE. So I hope you like my little guide through the stats, Azeroth talents and gameplay. So after watching this guide, you should be pretty solid playing Feral Druids in PvE. And again, I'm not learning you how to be a professional gamer, because then I would need a sign that says I'm a professional gamer. I'm just giving you a really good standpoint on how to start with Feral Druids for PvE and how you should be doing pretty well. So again, thanks guys for watching. I really hope you like this guide. If you like it, well, press the like button. Else give me a comment, and comment if you have any questions about this guide, or leave down a comment if you have any remarks and you think there's anything I should change. I mean, I cannot change a video when it first alive, but I can highlight it, comment in the comment section. So thanks guys for watching, and well, have an awesome night.